Good morning everyone and welcome to the Cabinet meeting. I'm Councillor Amanda Hopgood, Leader of Durham County Council and Chair of this meeting. The meeting is being broadcast live through our YouTube channel. Before we commence with today's formal business, I'd like to cover some of the housekeeping issues for us all to follow. Please switch off or make silent your mobile phones. Keep microphones switched off at all times unless invited to speak by myself as the Chair, and when invited to speak, please switch on the microphone nearest to you and introduce yourself. Thank you. So moving on with the agenda, item 1 is public questions. We haven't received any public questions for today's meeting. Item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of September. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those minutes, please?
Chair, Councillor Alan Shield, Cabinet Member for Equality Inclusion, and I move those minutes.
A seconder, please.
Chair.
Thank you. Can we agree the minutes are a true record? Agreed. Thank you. I can confirm therefore the minutes have been agreed. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any members present today who wish to declare an interest this morning? No? In that case, we'll move straight on to item 4, which is Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Strategy 2024 to 2029. Can I ask Amy Horhoff, Corporate Director of Regeneration, Economy and Growth, to present the report, please?
Thank you and good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. The purpose of this report is to seek Cabinet approval of the draft homelessness and rough sleeping strategy for a 7-week public consultation which will take place from the 30th of October 2023 to the 18th of December 2023. The new homelessness and rough sleeping strategy will update from and replace the current strategy which was adopted by Cabinet in July 2019. The revised strategy has been developed following a detailed review of homelessness and rough sleeping in the county. The review analysed data from April 2019 through to October 2022, looking at the current and future trends in relation to homelessness and rough sleeping and the challenges that we face as a housing authority. The strategy sets out how we aim to achieve the 4 priorities of homelessness over the next 5 years and covering the period 2024 to 2029. The priorities set out the key areas where the Council will focus activity to deliver the vision. Durham is a county where we all work together to eradicate homelessness and rough sleeping and where everyone has a safe place to call home. The 4 priorities are, firstly, to prevent people from becoming homeless. The second priority is to improve access and the supply of accommodation. Thirdly, to ensure the appropriate support is available for people who are homeless and working with partners to build resilience in people. And finally, priority 4, to reduce rough sleeping. Consultation on the strategy will be undertaken on the document from the 30th of October to the 18th of December 2023. This consultation will also run alongside the consultation on the draft housing strategy and will be joined up where it's appropriate to do so. Consultation will be carried out with residents of County Durham and other key partners and stakeholders with an interest in this document. Chair, that concludes my report and I propose the recommendations as set out in paragraph 12. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Can I invite Councillor Alan Shield, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Equality and Inclusion, to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The revised homelessness and rough sleeping strategy has been developed in line with Government's Code of Guidance for reviewing homelessness and formulating a strategy. It also meets the requirements brought about under the Homelessness Act 2002 for the development and publication of a homelessness strategy for every housing authority at least every 5 years. The draft strategy, which is a working document subject to improvements, has aligned its priority with the Government's Ending Rough Sleeping for Good intention, which sets out a clear definition of what the Government means by ending rough sleeping, and that is prevented wherever possible, and where it does occur, it is rare, brief and non-recurrent. The detailed review of homelessness and rough sleeping, being data-led and therefore evidence-based, was carried out between April 2019 and October 2022. And it did highlight a number of issues, that the number of people able to remain in their existing home has reduced by 34%. This is attributable to several reasons. For instance, the ending of private rented tenancies where landlords are selling their properties, tenants being unable to afford their rent due to the cost of living crisis and therefore falling into rent arrears, attributable to people, particularly women, fleeing domestic abuse. The reduction in homelessness prevention is also partly due to internal reporting processes. For instance, the incorrect apportionment criteria to the homelessness guidance, and this does need to be corrected, and it will be implemented before the strategy. There has also been an increase in the number of people with support needs, particularly those people with complex needs, those suffering with mental health, substance misuse and rough sleeping. Access to accommodation for certain homelessness cohorts is proving difficult. Those disadvantaged and particularly vulnerable groups, ex-offenders, those with complex support needs and rough sleeping. And lastly, there is insufficient supported accommodation for rough sleepers. This strategy highlights the challenges that we face as a housing authority and details how we will tackle the complex causes of homelessness by focusing on prevention and early intervention, working together with our partners and stakeholders. A detailed delivery plan will be developed in partnership with key partners. As previously mentioned, this is a working document and a light touch review will be carried out annually to address any policy or funding changes, as well as taking into consideration any significant differences in demand to the service. The delivery plan will be updated accordingly following the annual review and reported to Cabinet. And lastly, homelessness can lead individuals, families and friends into a cycle that can have a profound effect on all aspects of their lives. It is not just about accommodation. Homelessness can affect physical and mental health and well-being, educational achievement, the ability to gain and sustain employment, therefore putting pressure on personal and family relationships. The impact of homelessness can devastate lives and is often a long journey for an individual to rebuild their life up again. I therefore, Chair, move the recommendations in paragraph 12 of the report.
Thanks, Alan. Can I invite Councillor Chris Hood, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Adults and Health Services, to second the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The role of housing as a social determinant of health is widely recognised. A lack of adequate housing or substandard housing can negatively impact the health and well-being of individuals and their families. It is therefore vital that we tackle homelessness and rough sleeping across County Durham. Being at risk of or losing a home can be the result of many different structural or personal factors. Unless these factors are addressed, the ability of an individual or family to become resilient and improve their chance of a positive future is greatly reduced, placing them at risk of becoming trapped in a cycle of homelessness. The draft homelessness and rough sleeping strategy being considered today provides a clear strategic direction and vision of how we can address homelessness and rough sleeping across County Durham. I therefore second the recommendations in paragraph 12 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chris. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the report? Okay, can we agree the report and its recommendations? Agreed. Thanks. I can confirm that the recommendations are therefore agreed. Item 5, Medium-Term Financial Plan 14, 2024 to 25 and to 2027-28. Can I ask Paul Darby, Corporate Director of Resources, to present the report, please?
Morning, members. Thank you, Chair. Paul Darby, Corporate Director of Resources. This report sets out some updated financial forecasts for the next 4 years, building on the forecasts that were presented to Cabinet in July. Our MTFP forecasts continue to be developed against a backdrop of significant uncertainty that exists particularly beyond next financial year and in a climate of continued high and volatile inflationary and demand pressures on the Council, particularly in our social care budgets. There are a range of required adjustments to our previous assumptions that have been needed to be taken into account, and these are set out at paragraphs 37 to 42 of the report. The financial forecast still at this stage include an assumed 4.99% increase in council tax next year and a 2.99% increase in each of the remaining 3 years of this MTFP period. These are the maximum increases allowed and what the government expects us to implement. It is important to stress that we're not making budget decisions today on the level of council tax increases that will be applied next year or in the years that follow, nor are we making final decisions on implementing the new savings proposals that are included at Appendix 4. The new savings included at Appendix 4 total 2.9 million over the next 4 years, with 1.9 million of this considered to be achievable in 24-25. The budget deficit we are facing next year before we consider any savings is 16.3 million, factoring in the new savings proposals at Appendix 4 and the previously agreed and published savings for next year reduces the budget shortfall to 8.3 million. So we're still not in a position to be able to balance our budget based on these forecasts. Members will note that every 1% of council tax increase generates just under £2.7 million of additional revenue for the council, or to put it another way, if the council did not apply the referendum limit increases next year, then the deficit would increase by around 2.7 million for every 1% below the referendum limit. One of the savings proposals that we considered back in July related to the council tax reduction scheme grant payments to town and parish councils. Members will also recall that in July we also considered proposals to adopt the additional council tax flexibilities we currently have in terms of applying a 300% premium to properties that have been empty for more than 10 years, and for the powers we expect to receive once the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill is enacted in the coming weeks, in terms of the ability to apply a 100% premium to properties that have been empty for more than 12 months and to apply a 100% premium to second homes. All of these proposals have been subject to consultation over the last few months, and the outcome of that consultation will be factored into the tax base setting report we will consider in November, where Cabinet will be asked to make a series of policy decisions on these matters, and as these cannot wait until the budget setting next year. The table of paragraph 81 summarises the position based on the updated assumptions factored into this report and previously considered MTFP savings proposals that were agreed at Council in February this year and the new proposal that was set out in the Cabinet report in July. Members will see that before we consider the new proposals set out in this report, we have a budget deficit of £55.2 million over the next 4 years and circa 10 million of that falling into next year. If all of the circa £12.4 million of savings proposals previously reported are ultimately agreed and delivered, this puts it in a position of being around £11.7 million increased challenge in terms of balancing our budget compared to the position reported in July. The new savings proposal at Appendix 4 could reduce the deficit to £52.3 million, with a deficit of £8.3 million next year, should all the savings ultimately be agreed and delivered. The risks that are inherent in all the forecasts included in this report are set out at paragraph 87. Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Management Board will consider this report and the underlying assumptions and proposals at its meeting on the 23rd of October, and consultation on the new savings proposal set out in this report will commence on the 21st of October and run up until Christmas. The new savings proposal at Appendix 4 estimated result in a further just under 21 FTE reduction in our workforce, which when added to the workforce implications associated with the previously considered MTFP savings will mean there'll be an estimated 93 FTE reduction across this planning period. As is usual, there is an equality impact assessment screening that has been undertaken on all of the new savings proposals, and these are attached at Appendix 6 and summarised in the body of the report at paragraphs 61 to 80. With that, Chair, the recommendations are set out at paragraph 28. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Can I invite Councillor Richard Bell, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Finance, to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank the officers for this thorough report which updates the financial forecasts we considered in July. As we've heard, the significant financial deficits we face are now forecast to be higher than what we considered in July, around £4 million higher next year and just under £12 million higher over the 4-year MTFP planning period, largely due to revised assumptions on the national living wage and on pay inflation. This is not the budget report and has been said the assumptions on council tax increases included in our MTFP forecasts are for financial planning purposes, though the implications of ultimately not making decisions in line with these assumptions are made clear in the report. Every 1% on council tax generates around £2.7 million of additional council tax revenue. Or to put it another way, if the council does not maximise its council tax raising powers as the government expects us to do, then the financial challenge deficit we face increases by £2.7 million for every 1% council tax increase we do not apply. It's noteworthy that a 1% increase in council tax is broadly the same as a 1% increase in the council's pay bill. And the fact that the pay award is negotiated nationally and is outside of our control means we are at the mercy of national pay bargaining. For next year, we have had to assume a 4% pay award, given where the officers believe where the national living wage will land. This increase in our pay award assumptions alone has added over £5 million to our base budget pressures next year. So it can be seen that unless and until inflation and pay growth falls back to single-figure levels, the council has a structural budget problem. While the local government finance settlement last year provided some much-needed additional investment and greater certainty in terms of government funding for this and next year, there remains significant uncertainty beyond next year in terms of government funding. The additional funding provided, though welcome, falls well short of meeting the cost pressures we face. This and the additional revenue we can generate from expected increase in council tax still falls well short of the unavoidable cost pressures we will face. The report exemplifies that the unavoidable cost pressures linked to adult social care contracts, driven largely by national living wage increases and specific market sustainability and improvement grant requirements, total £17.8 million next year, while we can only generate around £5.2 million from an additional 2% adult social care precept, less than a third of the cost pressures that we will face. As a council, we simply cannot raise sufficient income locally to meet the unavoidable cost increases we face each year, so unless additional government funding meets the shortfall, difficult choices are always going to be required under the current system of funding. We now know that the Chancellor will present his autumn statement on the 22nd of November. This will give us a steer on what, if any, additional funding is to be made available to the sector next year in response to the increasing number of Section 114 notices that have been published by a range of councils across the country. I hope the government will listen in this regard. Disappointingly, the draft local government finance settlement will not be published until just before Christmas, and it is expected that this will be a one-year settlement again, which will fail to give us the certainty we need that a multi-year settlement would deliver. Further, while I welcome more money from central government at any time, if it arrives, the lateness of this settlement is not conducive to effective financial planning. We have called and will continue to call for the current system of local government finance, including council tax, to be reformed to reflect our needs and our limited ability to raise revenue via the council tax. I have written to leaders of all the main political parties asking them to give a commitment to this in their manifestos when these are published in the run-up to the next general election. The report identifies that the council is now facing a forecast deficit of £16.3 million next year and a funding deficit of around £67 million over the next 4-year MTFP period, this being the position after an assumption that we increase council tax by the maximum permissible of 4.99% and after factoring the savings plans that were agreed as part of MTFP 13. Those on low incomes are currently afforded significant protection through access to support through the council tax reduction scheme. Next week, Council will consider a report proposing that we continue this protection for all claimants next year and that we do not cap the report that can be received. This decision does, of course, come at a cost, over £60 million, in terms of lost council tax revenues compared with virtually every other council, but put on balance, and particularly in relation to the cost of living issues we all face at this time, is the right decision for next year. However, unless our finances improve, no long-term commitments on this can be given. Balancing our budget next year and across the next 4 years will be even more challenging than before based on these forecasts. It is vital, however, that we plan for the medium term. The report includes details of potential savings plans that could be implemented to help close the gap. These are set out at Appendices 2, 3 and 4, the savings at Appendices 2 and 3 being those previously agreed by Council and those published in July and subject to the consultation currently ongoing. Appendix 4 contains a list of new savings proposals that we will now also be consulting on. The new savings proposals, which total 2.9 million across the 4-year period, with 1.9 million considered to be achievable in 24-25. The consultation on the previously published savings proposals comes to an end on the 20th of October, and the new savings set out at Appendix 4 will be consulted on from the 21st of October. At our meeting in January, we will need to reflect carefully on the consultation feedback we receive before making final decisions on what proposals will be put to full council in February. At that meeting, our MTFP forecast will be updated for the local government finance settlement outcomes to and for any necessary amendments to the forecast in this report. Many authorities, including those that have found themselves in Section 114 territory, have fallen foul of not planning sufficiently well ahead, of not taking the tough decisions early enough, of taking far too high commercial risks and using reserves to unsustainable levels while exercising inadequate financial management. We have not and will not countenance such an approach here in Durham. I believe it is inevitable that the financial uncertainty we face will not be resolved until after the general election and we understand what the national funding position will be, and the final details of the fair funding review are ultimately published. Given the timing of the general election, I fear it's likely we will not get a multi-year settlement until at least 26-27, which will make budget setting over the next 2 years particularly tricky. With that, Chair, I am happy to support the recommendations as set out in the report at paragraph 28, A to F. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. As has been outlined, the challenges we face in balancing our budget next year and across the next 4 years will be difficult to manage. Continued unavoidable cost pressures from higher levels of inflation, including the impacts of national living wage increases, enduring demographic pressures in children and young people services, and from the employer's pay offer, which has once again outstripped our budget estimates this year and are placing a huge strain on our budgets next year. Funding levels beyond 24-25 remain uncertain, and in this regard, in line with the previous forecasts we previously considered. What is absolutely certain, though, is that without further investment to help the sector, then cuts will inevitably need to be made going forward. The forecasts in this report show that we will have a funding gap of around 16.3 million next year and around 67 million over the next 4 years. This will be a significant challenge given that over the last 13 years the Council has had to accommodate a funding gap of around £260 million to date. It is more important than ever that we have a well-managed budget and medium-term financial planning process to help us address these challenges. The report includes details of the £15.3 million of savings proposals across the next 4 years, 8 million of which can be delivered next year, which could help us reduce the funding gap we face next year to 8 million, and the overall gap to 52 million over the next 4 years. We will, of course, need to continue to review everything we do to drive out efficiencies wherever we can to limit the impact on frontline services. But I fear the scale of the challenge we face will mean that there will be inevitable impacts on frontline services to come unless the underlying funding position of the Council changes. An equality impact assessment of the new savings proposals in this report, which totals circa £3 million across the MTFP planning period, with circa £2 million considered deliverable next year, is attached at Appendix 6 and summarised in the report. These are important considerations, and together with the outcome of the consultation that is being undertaken on the previously published savings and the consultation that will be undertaken now on these new proposals, will, as has already been said by Councillor Bell, need to be carefully reflected upon before we make final decisions in January on what to put to County Council in February. At this stage, based on these forecasts, we face the prospect of having to utilise £8 million of our MTFP support reserve to balance the budget next year. This is around £2 million higher than the previous forecasts indicated, and despite the prospect of a further £2 million of new savings proposals being delivered next year. We can and we will use these reserves where it is prudent to do so and to help smooth in more sustainable budget solutions. The savings proposals in this report seek to maximise income raising opportunities and prioritise efficiencies in non-frontline service delivery as far as possible. And as has already been said, we will continue to lobby government directly for additional financial support and continue to call on the government to undertake a fundamental review of the local government finance system, including the council tax, as the current system disadvantages places like Durham and is unfair in our opinion. Next week, we will seek council approval to retain the local council tax scheme without a cap on support into next year. This is the right thing to do, given the hardship faced by so many residents, particularly at this time due to the continued squeeze on household incomes, and I hope that all members will support those proposals next week. With that, I'm happy to second the report. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the report? Councillor Hood?
Thank you, Chair. Our teams across adult social care work hard every day to support over 9,000 residents of the county who have eligible social care needs. Adult social care is a key statutory service with some of the biggest budgets that the council has, with a gross expenditure of £319 million. As we've heard, national living wage and CPI increases built into many of the contracts we hold in this area drives huge cost pressures into our budgets. Like many other parts of the country, our adult social care teams are seeing their work become more complex and meeting the needs of our residents becoming more challenging. There is a whole range of reasons for this, such as people living longer with multiple conditions, the complex needs of working age adults, COVID, pressures in the NHS, challenges within the care market, safeguarding and legal complexities. All of this translates into upward pressure on our cost base. As we head into winter, these pressures further increase and intensify. We have a strong track record in terms of integrated working with our partners in the NHS. This approach has helped to facilitate early discharge from hospitals and avoid delayed discharges in County Durham, alleviating some of the pressures in our hospitals and getting better outcomes for our residents. Our performance has consistently been amongst the best in the country in this regard. Building positive relationships with our care providers has ensured that we have, for example, no one waiting for a domiciliary care package to support them at home when coming out of hospital. The care market in County Durham is large and diverse. We have one of the largest care bed numbers in the county, with circa 5,205 beds across 147 care homes and nearly 60 domiciliary care providers, as well as a range of supported living, daycare, extra care and other services. Overall occupancy of care homes is currently around 85%, and the Council commissions the majority of that provision, with the remainder being people who are self-funders, who have the financial capacity to make their own arrangements, or residents placed by the NHS or other authorities. Having such a high reliance on the Council to commission these beds on behalf of our residents places huge financial pressures on the Council and is in stark contrast to more affluent areas of the country, where there is a much higher rate of self-funders and less reliance on the Council. The irony with that is that those authorities with invariable also high tax base authorities and can generate significantly more from their council tax increases than we can to meet a lower cost pressure in their area. How can that be fair? When, as we've heard, the adult social care precept in Durham generates less than 1/3 of the cost pressures we face in our social care contracts, let alone help towards the other inflationary pressures we will face across these services, from pay inflation in our social care teams. What I will close by saying is that the quality of care in County Durham, in terms of services rated by the Care Quality Commission as good or outstanding, is higher than both the North East and England averages. Simply put, in County Durham, 9 out of 10 care beds provided by Durham County Council are rated good or outstanding by the Care Quality Commission. This is something that this Cabinet and Council are incredibly proud of, and something that, with adequate funding, we can continue to provide for many years to come. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chris. Councillor Henderson?
Thanks, Chair. Our teams across the children's social care work hard each day to support and protect over 4,000 vulnerable children. The increase in demand for children in care services has led to significant cost pressure on the council, with the number of children in care almost twice what it was 7 years ago, which was 600 children then. It is now 1,200 in care. This is clear evidence from the research of the links between the higher level of poverty and demand for children's social care. This means that the same level of need and cost is not manifesting in more affluent parts of the country. The funding from government is often focused upon the adult social care and not the children's social care, and this is placing a significant financial burden on the councils to fund these key statutory responsibilities. In Durham, our children in care budget have had to be increased by £32.7 million. That's 49% over the last 5 years. And there is a forecast of £7.1 million as overspend in the current year, needing a further £8 million growth in the budget next year. Our MTFP planning assumptions build on the additional 20.6 million of expected and required budget growth across the next 5 years, none of which is currently reflected in the funding we will receive as a council. At the same time, both demand and market forces have resulted in a trebling of our home-to-school transport costs over the last 5 years, largely driven by SEND travel requirements. Again, this is not being adequately funded by the government, and the current system of funding disadvantages us in this regard. We must, of course, ensure that we protect our most vulnerable children from harm and ensure we meet our statutory responsibilities in this regard. I am proud of our good Ofsted rating and quality of care which we provide to the children and young people in the county. I do recognise the cause, of course, the financial pressures this is placing on the council, and unless things change, the impact it has on our discretionary frontline services. This is why the current funding regime must change to address the current inadequate and unfairness on the national basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ted. Is there any other member wishing to speak? No. Can we agree the report and its recommendations? Okay, I can confirm that the recommendations are agreed. Item 6, the Director of Public Health Annual Report 2023. Can I ask Amanda Healy, Director of Public Health, to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Obviously, I'm Amanda Healy, Director of Public Health, and it's my statutory requirement as Director of Public Health to write a report, an independent report of the health of the population on an annual basis, and for the local authority to publish that report. And this year it's been 10 years of public health being in local government, and also 10 years of the Health and Wellbeing Board being in place. And I really wanted us to think through the report of looking back and reflecting on health and wellbeing and the things that have taken place over that last 10 years, but using that to really look ahead and what are our ambitions for our residents in terms of their health and wellbeing. So, in terms of the health of our people, and there's a few elements of this within the report, It is really important that we use good quality data and intelligence, and I think we're in a really strong position in County Durham with our work on Durham Insight, which is a bit of one version of the truth, both for us and for our partners. We use the data to inform us, and that includes obviously how we use our resources as well as how we target our interventions, and also how we commission our services. So that drawing together of that data really helps us in decision making. Over the last year in particular, post-pandemic, we've refreshed our joint strategic needs and assets assessment. That group is co-chaired by myself and a local GP. It has a really wide range of partners as part of that, and really helping us to think about how we draw together both the data but also local conversations to help us prioritise our programmes and our spend and allocation. It also helps us to think about more in-depth understanding, and you can see both on the presentation but also in the report. Over the last year there's been a couple of really in-depth pieces of work. One, thinking about our veterans and the needs of our veterans, and actually what that found was there's actually quite a wealth of support out there, but it isn't always joined up, so it's about joining the two things together in relation to our veterans and their needs, as well as the strengths that they have in themselves and how they support each other. And then the Age and Well Health Needs Assessment, and I'm sorry to say that was for people over 50, so some of us in this room, but it was about really how do we age healthily within County Durham, and really thinking about how that is taken forward. And a lot of this work really helps us with our underpinning work around health and wellbeing, about fairness for access to some of our services. We also see quite often we think about the negatives, the deficits, but actually we have huge strengths and assets within County Durham, and we've been really trying to think about those assets within our joint strategic needs and assets assessment. You know, we have obviously a huge array of green space and our coastline, our facilities. People often think of the buildings when they think of assets. And one of the ways we've kind of really thought about this in the last year through the Health and Wellbeing Board is the development of our physical activity strategy. You know, how are we really thinking about the use of our council leisure facilities, but also our community networks, and also our sports pitches, our fields, and our array of clubs that are out there, and really thinking about how that balances and how we can improve levels of physical activity, utilising the assets that we have in County Durham. And I think we've got to remember, certainly for physical activity, that also has a really, really good impact on people's mental health, so it can improve people's overall health and well-being. We still, as ever, have challenges in County Durham. Our life expectancy has been increasing, like many other parts of the country. It's just starting to stall, and I think we've seen that everywhere, particularly at post-pandemic. But I think what we do see is that our life expectancy is still lower than the rest of England, and that we do see those differences within County Durham. But again, I think it's taking that information and using it to the best effect in terms of targeting our interventions and using our resources. We've just heard about, you know, our financial pressures, using our resources accordingly to target our work. What you'll also see in the report, I've just mentioned COVID there, and obviously over the last 2 years we've seen such an impact of the pandemic, and in particular what we're seeing coming through there is the impact on children's mental health, and how we are reviewing some of that impact on children and what we can do about it. You know, what's the scale of the programmes that we need in our schools or with our local communities to improve children's mental health, and I think that will come to the fore. And you can see a really good case study in the report from Shotton Primary School of some work that they're doing within the Durham Resilience Programme, which we have in some of our schools but not everywhere. You'll finally see, I think, in the report, what we're trying to describe is what impacts on people's health and well-being. So we see our person, and the different colours almost kind of represent kind of the amount of things that impact on people's health and well-being. So we often think of the NHS and social care, and really that's about 15% of people's health, what makes up people's health and well-being. And then those healthy behaviours, which might be about people's weight, or just talking about physical activity, it might be about smoking, for example, that's about 40%. And then 45% are the wider determinants. And in many respects, that's one of the really core reasons public health being in local government is such a good place to be, because the influences, we've heard already about homelessness and the joint between homelessness and health and well-being so interlinked. So it gives us the opportunity to really, really work on those issues of the wider determinants of health. And some of our key stats there. Some we've still got challenges, other, for example, sexually transmitted infections, where we are much lower than other parts of the country. And I guess in terms of that reflection of 10 years of public health in the local authority, I think that is some of the real benefits, that we are much closer to colleagues in education, environment, housing, the links to our community and social networks, and obviously the leadership that local politicians bring with their local communities that we didn't have when previously being based within the NHS. And it also brought, I suppose, new responsibilities to local government that I've never really seen before. You know, the responsibility for sexual health services, the responsibility for substance misuse, and how that has developed over the last 10 years and been embedded. And that will also be part of our County Durham Partnership event in November, celebrating some of that really joined up work. And I wanted to kind of look back and look back over the reports of the different directors of public health and really say, well, so what? You know, it's great having our data, it's great having these programs, but have they made a difference? And I think for some people who have been here over the last 10 years, many people might remember the kind of All the Lonely People report that was from one of my predecessors, Anna Lynch. And that did lead to significantly increased both funding to adult social care into meeting the needs of people who were socially isolated in that way. And then our work on work and health that was through Jill O'Neill really got us thinking about things like the Better Health at Work Award and how work, and we've really taken that work forward as a council in terms of our staff health and well-being. And then the range of reports initially started with our priorities of the Taylor family, but then obviously a huge impact of our pandemic. But the priorities, and hopefully the reports have helped to guide some of those priorities. You'll see in the report, again, going back to the health and well-being, the trends over the last 10 years and where there have been some significant improvements. And I guess even where we see some decreases or increases, for example, in depression, for me, in terms of mental health over the last 10 years, we've seen a huge change in the ability of people to open up and talk about mental health. It was just World Mental Health Day yesterday, and listening to people, you know, actually talk about stigma and discrimination and really opening up about that is very different to how it was 10 years ago. We've also seen 10 years of health and wellbeing, and obviously Councillor Hood currently chairs the Health and Wellbeing Board, and the Cabinet members part of that. And again, I think that's overseen some really great work. We have recently had the annual report published, and we've also recently refreshed the joint local health and wellbeing strategy, which draws out those kind of key elements in terms of making smoking history, enabling healthy weight for all, improving mental health resilience and wellbeing, and reducing alcohol harms, but intertwining those with those wider determinants of health that I've mentioned earlier in this presentation. And one of those key kind of areas of kind of intertwining and linking is that link between health, wealth, work and economic development. And I think we've had some really good examples over the years in terms of the development of our Better Health at Work Award with over 100 organisations, really thinking about mental health and talking about mental health in small businesses in particular, which was really challenging but really positive piece of work. Employment support within things like Durham Works and Durham Enable around mental health, and much more recently having the opportunity to be a really key partner in the development of the inclusive economic strategy, which will mean that our strategy, while being really ambitious, will also ensure that we will not leave people behind, because if people's health and well-being isn't good, it forms a real drag both on productivity and on outcomes. And you will then see in the report, as ever, what we've tried to do is bring some of the work to light with case studies, which I'm not as good as doing standing up here presenting, but you'll see a case study in relation to family hubs, a case study in terms of substance misuse, and again, how people through our services, but through our wider connections with the council and partners, were able to support those individuals who's somebody's son, daughter, etc. And then here, our work built on some of the work during the pandemic, but some fantastic ongoing work with our children, young people services when it come to strep A, group strep A infections last winter, and that we can respond to things really quickly. And for me, as ever, within public health, it works both ways. It's about the expertise of our colleagues right across the council and with partners. So I guess in conclusion for the report, it does feel that public health's in the right place, and it's very much embedded across the council. There has been some real improvements in health and wellbeing over the last 10 years, but still with more to do. And we still have some real key areas of challenge. And those areas of challenge, they also impact and intertwine with, those social determinants of health. We've seen the Health and Wellbeing Board lead many changes too, and really strengthen over the last 10 years, overseeing some quite significant changes in terms of the health and social care landscape, for example. But all of that is really, the bedrock is about how we work together as partners, and I think partnership working is very strong in County Durham. And certainly what we want to see is for the next 10 years, and many of these issues are long-term changes that would like to look ahead to 2033 to see some of those challenges really addressed and those inequalities. And there's no reason why we can't do that here in County Durham. And then finally, Chair, the recommendations are for Cabinet to receive the report and to agree to publish the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. It's comprehensive as ever. Can I invite Councillor Chris Hood, Portfolio Holder for Adult and Health Services, to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to welcome the independent annual report from Amanda Healy, Director of Public Health. This year's report, 10 Years in Local Authority, Looking Back to Plan Ahead, includes an in-depth focus on 10 years of public health in the local authority. The Health and Social Care Act 2012 was a major reform of the healthcare system and public health policy in England. It moved the public health function and services, including the Director of Public Health statutory responsibilities, from the NHS to local councils in April 2013, giving them responsibility to improve and protect the health of their residents. Moving into the local authority provided the environment for public health to advocate, influence and work with others responsible for issues including housing, education and the economy, which all have an impact on people's health. In addition, working with elected members ensured that public health was focused more on working with communities. As always, the Director of Public Health annual report provides an update on the current health and well-being of our residents and highlights some in-depth work to understand the needs of our veterans across County Durham. It also recognises some of the challenges faced over the last 10 years, such as the response and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and the cost of living crisis and how this has impacted locally. The Health and Wellbeing Board has overseen a wide range of work over the last 10 years, including the integration of health and social care. The report provides an update on the Health and Wellbeing Board and the work undertaken against the 4 current key health priorities for County Durham, which are making smoking history, enabling healthy weight for all, improving mental health, resilience and well-being, and reducing alcohol harms. The report highlights that smoking prevalence has decreased by 6.7%. That's a reduction of 26,700 smokers since 2013. However, at 14.5%, our levels remain above the national average, and we need to concentrate our efforts in County Durham to having a smoke-free future for our families. It also highlights the strong links with the social determinants of health, with joint work between health and the economy as an example. I'd like to thank Amanda and her team, and I therefore propose that Cabinet agrees to publish this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chris. Can I invite Councillor Ted Henderson, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Children and Young People Services, to second the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to receive the DPH annual report for 2023. The report provides an update on the health of our people and how the strengths and assets in the county support and protect the health of our 522,000 residents. Our communities work together and alongside us to both strengthen existing assets and develop new ones. The report provides examples on the enhanced collaboration work involving health, social care, council staff, wider partners and communities. The annual report highlights the family hubs and Start for Life programme to improve the lives of babies, the children, young people, the parents and the carers. I am pleased to see the case study which highlights how the family hubs provide families with information and support they need to help them live better, healthier and happier lives. No work to improve public health can be achieved without working with the others, our partners, and most importantly, our local communities. I am therefore happy to second the DPH report for this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the report? Okay, can we agree the report and its recommendations? Okay, confirm the recommendations are agreed. Item 7, which is probably the longest title ever. It even beats what Mr Darby can normally send. So, County Durham Design Code, Trees, Woodlands and Hedges, Shop Fronts and Energy Efficiency, Renewables and the Historic Environment Supplementary Planning Documents. Can I ask Amy Harhoff, Corporate Director of Regeneration, Economy and Growth, to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. And yes, it is a very long title, and that is just a reflection that this report covers multiple documents. So I will run through them all in turn now for the Cabinet. So the purpose of this report is to seek the Cabinet's approval to commence the consultation on the second draft of the County Durham Design Code, Trees, Woodlands and Hedges Supplementary Planning Documents, and the first draft of the Shop Fronts and Energy Efficiency, Renewables and Historic Environment Supplementary Planning Documents. At the meeting on the 21st of October 2020, the Council adopted the County Durham Plan. In order to provide a more detailed guidance or advice on policies in the plan, government guidance also allows for the preparation of supplementary planning documents, also abbreviated to SPDs. And these are capable of being a material consideration in planning decisions, but are not part of the development plan itself. So moving firstly to the County Durham Design Code, the County Durham Design Code SPD sets down the guidance for ensuring development is well designed and better suited to the context they are in. It articulates how development should reflect its local context and is applicable to all scales and all types of development. The SPD will be supported by a settlement character study which provides a key evidence base for understanding the history and character of different settlements in the county. The first draft of the County Durham Design Code was consulted on from the 24th of February to the 11th of April this year. There were 16 consultees who made representations to this document, and a statement of that consultation is detailed in Appendix 6 of this report. The second SPD is the Trees, Woodland and Hedges SPD, which sets out the guidance to ensure that trees, woodlands and hedges are fully considered as part of the planning process and including retaining them in new development, protecting them during construction and setting out circumstances where we will use tree preservation orders as an authority. The first draft of the Trees, Woodland and Hedges SPD was also consulted on the 24th of February to the 11th of April this year, and there were 16 consultees who made representations. A full statement of the consultation is detailed in Appendix 7 and reflected in the current draft. We then move to the Shop Fronts SPD, which sets out the guidance to promote good shopfront design, restoration and refurbishment. And the aim is to improve the general standard of design across the county when carrying out general shopfront alterations and when bringing vacant buildings back into use. This is especially important in areas that are designated as a conservation area or affect the designation or non-designation of heritage assets. We then finally move to the Energy Efficiency, Renewables and Historic Environment SPD. This sets out guidance for property owners in considering making energy efficient or renewable energy improvements within the historic environment. And this can include work to existing listing buildings, non-designated heritage assets and to properties within conservation areas. It contains detailed guidance relating to different types of renewable energy provision, such as solar panels, heat pumps, wind turbines, biomass, and electric vehicle charging points. If agreed, the consultation will be undertaken on the SPDs from the 23rd of October to the 3rd of December, and the consultation will be undertaken in accordance with the Council Statement of Community Engagement. Chair, that concludes my report and the full recommendations are set out within paragraph 8. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Can I invite Councillor Elizabeth Scott, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Economy and Partnerships, to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall that the County Durham Plan was adopted in October 2020. However, that was not the end of the story, and we are now bringing forward a number of documents over the next few years which will supplement its content. The County Durham Design Code SPD fulfills the requirement to prepare a design guide code as set out in the National Planning Policy Framework and will be one of the first in the country. The Trees, Woodland and Hedges SPD will help protect our important trees, woodlands and hedges and support their contribution to the county's biodiversity. The Shopfront Design Guide SPD will promote good shopfront design, restoration and refurbishment, improving the attractiveness of our town and local centres. The Energy Efficiency, Renewables and the Historic Environment SPD will help to improve the energy efficiency of historic buildings and reduce energy costs, therefore improving the appeal of living in historic buildings and helping to avoid them becoming vacant and falling into disrepair. As a council, we always emphasise the importance of consultation, and we will therefore be seeking views on these documents for 6 weeks, up until 3rd December 2023, to inform their final content. I therefore propose the recommendations in paragraph 8 of the report.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Can I invite Councillor James Rowlandson, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Resources, Investment and Assets, to second the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. These documents being considered today give additional detail and clarity on what is required for new development to be acceptable, expanding on the policies of the County Durham Plan and providing certainty for developers and reassurance for residents. I therefore second the recommendations in paragraph 8 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, James. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the report? No? Can we agree the report and its recommendations?
Agreed.
Great, thank you. Can confirm that the recommendations are agreed. Item 8, Climate Emergency Response Plan 2, 2022-23 update. If I can ask Alan Patrickson, Corporate Director of Neighbourhoods and Climate Change, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides an update on the progress of the Council's second Climate Emergency Response Plan. The plan covers a period 2022 to 2024, and this is the interim annual update for 2023. The report also covers the developing approach for future iterations of this plan from 2024 onwards, as we approach the target date of net zero of 2030 for the activities of the Council. Durham County Council declared a climate emergency in 2019 and in doing so required that an emergency response plan would be prepared. The first iteration of the plan was adopted by Cabinet in February 2020. The second edition of the plan was approved by Cabinet in June of 2022 and set out revised targets of being net zero in our own activities by 2030 and net zero county by 2045. While challenging, these targets align with those set nationally by government and many other comparable public sector and commercial organisations. The plan set out over 150 projects to move us towards our net zero goals, and I'm pleased to be able to report that progress against these is good and that a continuing headline reduction in carbon emissions has been achieved. The Council's carbon emissions in 2022-2023 were 43,475 tonnes of CO2 equivalent, which represents a 5% reduction over the previous year and a drop of 59% since our baseline year of 2009. Emissions reductions were achieved across each of the three major categories, those being electricity from buildings, gas from heating and transport. This speaks to the success of the strategies for building and vehicle decarbonisation adopted in 2022. The challenge for the future remains substantial, however. The current rate of reduction is around 2,500 tonnes per year, and this needs to increase to around 3,200 tonnes per year to achieve our targets. Our large building estate and vehicle fleet represent both opportunities and challenges in this respect, and the report sets out how we've already delivered a number of successful and innovative projects where funding has been available. Central government support is essential to our continued success, and the public sector decarbonisation scheme has already helped deliver significant progress in the county in leisure centres and other buildings. In addition, the £8.5 million project to design and deliver a low-carbon depot at Morrison Busty, part funded by the European Regional Development Fund, is now operational. With a 3 megawatt solar farm, a 2 megawatt battery storage, this depot is now one of the most advanced public sector facilities in the country in terms of its emissions, building management and energy efficiency. The Council also continues to maintain and develop nature-based solutions, and the report details projects from the High Pennines to the Durham coast, providing benefits through carbon sequestration alongside landscape and habitat protection. The latest nationally available figures for the county are for 2021 and show a reduction of 52% from our baseline year of 1990, continuing the overall downward trend. There was an increase between 2020 and 2021. This was accounted for by the lack of activity across the county in 2020 due to the COVID pandemic. It's to note here that the data for the county as a whole lags behind that of our own emissions due to the complexity of the data management and interpretation. The report details a wide range of activity across the county in areas such as housing, transport, business and the natural environment. Engagement from the business community in the low carbon agenda has been considerable, and the appetite to move to a low carbon economy is strong. Recent research shows that County Durham is showing positive signs of moving towards a green recovery, with an environmental goods and services sector worth £1.7 billion in 2021-2022. The report details the continuing work of the Council and its partners on education and engagement, particularly around issues surrounding climate change, with activities in schools and universities, communities and business forums throughout the year. Looking forward, the next iteration of the Climate Emergency Response Plan will come to Cabinet in 2024. This will be only 6 years away from our net zero target date, and our approach to planning will adapt to reflect this. The timing of the plans will shift to encompass 2 discrete 3-year periods, structured to present pathways to success in the run-up to 2030, along with consideration of Scope 3 emissions, which are those linked to the supply chain. The plan continues to develop over time as circumstances change, and this rounded strategic approach will set out a clear direction for our activities towards 2030. Chair, this interim report demonstrates considerable progress against the Climate Emergency Response Plan during the last 12 months and maintains a forward-looking positive approach to the escalating challenges from climate change. The recommendations are set out in paragraph 13.
Thanks, Alan. Can I invite Councillor Mark Wilkes, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Neighbourhoods and Climate Change, to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The science is clear and the facts are clear. The impacts of climate change represent the biggest single threat to people across the world, to our global community, and therefore to our local communities here in County Durham as well. We know that there's only a very short time to make the changes necessary to mitigate against these impacts, and at this point it is certain that we are only providing mitigation. The pace of change is such that avoidance is no longer an option. In the 4 years since the Council declared its climate emergency, the increase in extreme weather events has been obvious. Floods, wildfires, storms and droughts have all become commonplace, creating devastation and destruction for many in this country and around the world. Every month that passes seems to add a new statistic to the record books. This year, some areas of Europe have seen soaring temperatures almost unbearable for the population. Last month was the hottest September since records began, and October has remained unseasonably warm. Climate change isn't just a concept, it is with us, and these symptoms are only the beginning if we do not act together to bring our carbon emissions down. We continue to do our part. This report provides an update on the extensive activity of this Council to fulfil the promise of the Climate Emergency Declaration and to deliver the Climate Emergency Response Plan. Our priority as a joint administration to tackle climate change has secured more grant funding in 2 years than at any time before we took over the Council. The work of our low carbon team is astounding, and I thank all of them and our senior management for their commitment to this cause. Our carbon emissions continue to reduce, 5% down over the last year, 59% down on the base year of 2009. The investment in low-carbon technologies for our buildings and our fleet is delivering results, and our focus on nature-based solutions and the natural environment brings multiple benefits to the climate and also to our communities. We have decarbonised leisure centres and offices, and we've completed work on Morrison Busty, our solar-powered depot. This is a groundbreaker, a unique project, an entire depot with operational offices, workshops, a horticultural nursery and vehicle charging facilities, all powered by its own solar farm. Zero carbon. It can be done, and we are leading the way in showing how, and in doing so, we are saving money as well. These projects make sense because they are the future, but they're also the present, and while our focus right now is quite rightly on making good financial decisions, our continuing work in this arena is vital. Energy efficiency, low-carbon technology and renewable power save us money in the long term, and also often in the short term by reducing our energy bills and protecting us from global inflationary pressures in the energy market. The conversion of our streetlights, for example, to low-energy LEDs already saves us over £7 million per year in energy costs. The report also highlights the work of the Council across the county to encourage and support our communities and our businesses in their own efforts to lower their emissions. The Government has set targets for the country to be net zero by 2050. Our target is 2045 for County Durham, and we continue to work towards that goal. When I presented the Climate Emergency Response Plan to Cabinet last June, I described it as an extensive and comprehensive plan with 10 priority areas that we must address to mitigate the impact that climate change will have on our lives and our communities. Within each area, a costed action plan brought forward proposals for solutions. This update demonstrates that we are delivering on these priorities and we are providing those solutions. Progress is good, but more will need to be done to meet our targets, and we need more government support. We have leadership here working on this. We need leadership from London, and we need investment. This was clear in 2019 when we declared our climate emergency. It was clear last June, and it remains so now. We can deliver, but the funding must be available, and we can't do it alone. Next year, we will bring a third response plan, and some of the issues we will be addressing there are highlighted in this report as we look towards 2030. Chair, I'm confident that we can achieve the targets that have been set out if we get the funding we need, and I can confirm that I'm happy to present this report and look forward to doing more work in this area over the coming years.
Thanks, Mark. Can I invite Councillor Susan MacDonald, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Digital Customer Services and Procurement, to second the report?
Thank you, Chair. We're all aware of the impact and changes around us caused by climate change. The effects are with us now and will be for a long time to come. This update report demonstrates our significant progress against the ambitious action plan that came to Cabinet last year. It shows that not only are we reducing our own carbon emissions as an organisation, which is encouraging in itself, but also that we're working with businesses and communities across the county to provide help, support, advice and encouragement to further help to reduce emissions. To me, it's encouraging that there is such a demand for from our business community and our partners to work towards a low-carbon economy. The Business Energy Efficiency Project, for instance, has supported over 500 SMEs with targeted advice and grants, and the demand has been incredibly high, such as the value of the service provided. Our engagement and advocacy work around climate change within the business community has brought together entrepreneurs and problem solvers to work together on this agenda, sharing their experience, knowledge and best practice. And in our communities, we're leading the way on the installation of community electric vehicle charging, with 150 charge points installed across the county, and there's more to come. With 3 million recently won from the government to install a further 250 fast and rapid chargers, which makes vehicle charging more accessible to everyone. Finally, I just want to mention some of the important work we're involved in around the nature-based solutions. I recently heard how our partnership projects at the Heritage Coast and Seascapes are working with the universities on research to restore marine habitats off the Durham coast, and the huge potential for this to help absorb and store carbon. It's new and exciting, and once again, we are at the forefront. This report demonstrates progress across the wide range of projects outlined in the Emergency Response Plan. Progress is very good, and we must maintain our efforts. I'm happy to second the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the report? Yeah, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. Given the constraints on the council budgets that I spoke about earlier, it's pleasing to note the continued success of the team in securing funding from central government for climate change initiatives, and I draw Cabinet's attention to a couple of examples in paragraph 10, electric vehicle charging points, and the Business Energy Efficiency Project, which we've heard from Councillor MacDonald has been very successful. I'd note also the report says that it's often very competitive to obtain these funding from central government. They aren't just allocated to us, so the importance of having a strong climate change team with projects ready to go and ready to slap in an application as soon as a fund becomes available from central government is something we need to acknowledge as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Richard. Is there anyone else wishes to speak to the report? Okay, can we agree the report and its recommendations? Okay, I can confirm that the recommendations are agreed. Item 9, Culture Reserve. Can I ask Amy Horhoff, Corporate Director of Regeneration, Economy and Growth, to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to highlight the development that has taken place since the Durham County Council's bid for UK City of Culture 2025. The report sets out the strategic rationale for the investment of the 2 million Culture Reserve retained as part of the review of earmarked reserves undertaken last year through the development of the medium-term financial plan. And this funding, together with any additional grants leveraged and contributions from outside bodies, will form the budget to meet the costs of the proposed programme. The reserve was identified following Durham's placing as a finalist in the UK City of Culture competition. And the whole county came together to create the bid, and a county-wide grouping has continued to test the propositions during this past year, ensuring that the proposed high-level programme for this investment has extensive partner and participant input and builds on the great work and partnerships that we secured through our bid for the UK City of Culture 2025. The report sets out a high-level programme that will utilise the Culture Reserve and, importantly, leverage further funding from a range of sources, supporting a substantial programme of investment over the next 3 years across County Durham. It seeks delegated authority for myself and the Cabinet Member for Economy and Partnerships to agree a detailed programme supported by input from partners and organisations across our county. In line with our Council's approach to an inclusive economy, the use of this culture reserve will support a programme that maximises inclusion for people and communities across the county and provides a county-wide impact for all, not just in activities and events, but also in skills, in the creation of jobs, and co-produced with place shaping and community resilience at its heart. The programme will continue to be developed in partnership and focus on using culture-led investment to support a stronger economy for County Durham. I therefore note the recommendations as set out in paragraph 22 of this report, and that concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Amy. Can I invite Councillor Elizabeth Scott, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Economy and Partnerships, to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Durham County Council is proud of its long-term commitment to culture-led regeneration. County Durham's place as a finalist in the UK City of Culture competition was testament to the energy, creativity and collective action of a range of partners across the county. The process involved hundreds of local people, and those people continued on the journey that refined the key elements of the bid to develop longer-term propositions that will have a deep and long-term impact on our places, communities and economy. The report identifies that key economic, social and place-based elements of the City of Culture bid are now updated and embedded into the inclusive economic strategy. This approach ensures that programmes and policies relating to culture, heritage and well-being balance growth, inclusion and opportunity, ensuring that interventions will benefit all communities in the county while contributing to economic success, profile and sector development. Use of the Culture Reserve will support long-term cultural development of our places and people, and we're particularly excited that we'll be able to support creative education and creative careers and skills development. The rollout of Place Labs means that community-led activity will be supported across a county-wide range of locations, often connecting wider place-shaping investments and partnerships. Large-scale events such as Finding the Light will further contribute to our growing visitor economy, which this year hit the £1 billion mark. Importantly, this use of reserve shows our partners and potential co-funders that County Durham is seriously committed to culture and the role that it plays in our economy and communities. Times are challenging for both local government and local people. However, this investment and its leverage will maximise impact to our communities through supporting long-term resilience and success. I therefore propose the recommendations as set out in paragraph 22 of the report.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Can I invite Councillor James Rowlandson, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Resources, Investment and Assets, to second the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Councillor Scott for outlining the strategic benefits of the Culture Reserve as set out in the report. As you will be aware, the Durham County Council is leading the development of the culture, creative tourism and sport portfolio towards the establishment of the North East Mayoral Combined Authority in May 2024, and as a result of the North East Devolution Deal. The strategic intent of this report aligns closely to the North East Devolution Deal, a deal that has dedicated reference to an ambitious cultural framework for the region. Our approach places County Durham firmly at the heart of the wider North East ambitions for the culture, creative, tourism and sport sectors over the next 30 years and beyond. This provides further confidence that the leverage the reserve can achieve will be long-term, inclusive and deeply impactful for the local people and the economy. I therefore propose the recommendations set out in paragraph 22 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, James. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the report before I say a few words on it? No? So, our bid for the City of Culture 2025 crown showed our ambition for County Durham and demonstrated how this area can only improve the quality of life for residents, but also how it would have a significant positive impact on our economy. This reserve will act as an enabler to attract matched funding to the county. It will build on the amazing work already taking place by our teams and partners. But the reality is that if we don't promote and spread the message of what we can offer, the fantastic offers that County Durham has, no one else will. And that applies to the wider North East as well. For too long, we've let culture-led regeneration take a back seat, and that stops now. It is an honour for Durham to be the lead authority in the LA7 through the devolution deal on arts, culture, tourism and sport. And what better way to lead than by example and showing how much this matters to us all. So with that, I would ask for Cabinet to agree the report and its recommendations, please. Okay, I confirm therefore that the recommendations are agreed. Item 10 is any other business. I haven't been notified of any other business for today's meeting, so I'd like to thank everyone for taking part and to those members of the public and other members of the council who've watched the meeting this morning. Thank you. That concludes the business for this meeting.